They say loyalty is a virtue. But in a world where numbers dictate reality, loyalty is nothing more than a bad investment. A wasted asset. For 7 long years, I was the silent brain behind the Alex Group empire. I knew every graph, every heartbeat of their market moves better than the lines on my own palm. I thought we were building a future together. I thought I was protecting the woman I loved. But I was wrong. I wasn't building a future. I was merely constructing a throne for a queen who was already sharpening the blade for my execution. The rain feels different tonight. Cold. Final. I looked at the corporate badge in my hand. A piece of plastic that supposedly defined my worth for nearly a decade. With a single movement, I let it go. I watched it disappear into the bottomless abyss of the city streets. The old Kai died the moment that badge hit the pavement. Now, only the architect remains. The elevator hummed as I descended. The air in the building was already starting to feel alien. The doors opened to a silence that was almost palpable. I walked into the boardroom. Alex didn't even look at me. She was staring at the window, her reflection cold and untouchable. "You're late, Kai," she said. 5 minutes. For someone who claims to be a partner, that is an inexcusable lack of discipline. And then there was Ricky. Sitting on the edge of her desk like he already owned the place. Our bold man just worked too hard. Market analysis is so boring, isn't it, Kai? It takes up so much time, which you don't seem to have anymore. Ricky, your last crypto futures trade lost the company $12 million in a single night. I wouldn't joke about time if I were you. I would spend it reading economics textbooks before you lose what's left. Enough. Alex screamed. Her palm hit the desk like a gunshot. Kai. Ricky has a vision you lack. You've become a burden. Your calculations are too cautious. You're afraid to risk, and I'm afraid of standing still. She threw an envelope onto the table. It slid across the glass like a death warrant. Here is your month's pay. You're fired. Your access to all terminals was blocked a minute ago. You have 10 minutes to gather your things. Security will escort you out of the building. "10 minutes. Funny. For 7 years, I didn't take a single day off. I pulled you out of lawsuits when your father left you nothing but debt. Is this all I earned?" You got your salary. We are even. Leave. I slowly placed my keycard on the table. The sound of the plastic hitting the glass echoed like a bell. Remember this moment, Alex. Today, you didn't just fire an employee. You disconnected the life support system of your entire business. Good luck, you're going to need it when Ricky starts burning through your last reserves. I walked through the lobby. People I had trained, people I had saved, all looked away. The air outside was still heavy with rain, but for the first time in years, I could breathe. She thought I lived on her salary. How naive. While I managed her billions, I found every loophole to build my own secret empire. I bought out competitors through shell companies. I invested in the very startups she called worthless. The penthouse was quiet. A sanctuary of glass and steel. I sat at the command center. Dozens of screens flickered to life, bathing the room in a cold glow. System, update the balance. Welcome back, Mr. Kai. Your total liquid capital is $640 million. And the Lingxian district land? Valuation has increased to $3 billion following the morning government decree on the tech hub. Are you ready to liquidate? No. Not yet. I want to watch her struggle first. I want her to see her world burn before I offer to sell her the water. My phone vibrated. A name appeared that I hadn't seen in months. Regina. I heard they kicked you out like a dog, she said. Her voice was like velvet dipped in poison. You always did love to exaggerate, Regina. Kai, let's get to the point. You own the land in Lingxian. Alex is desperate for it. She has no idea that her only hope for survival belongs to the man she humiliated. Come to my office tonight. Let's make her an offer she can't refuse, or one that will burn her to the ground. I'll be there in an hour. Tonight, we celebrate the beginning of the end. While I was calculating her downfall, Alex was trying to hide her panic in an elite nightclub. Why isn't he calling? She snapped. He should be crawling back. He's nothing without me. Forget him, baby. Ricky whispered, his arm around her. I just put $200 million into Golden Dawn. By morning, we'll double our stakes. We don't need Kai's caution. We need speed. They were dancing on the edge of a volcano, completely unaware that I had already triggered the eruption. Then, the first crack appeared. Her phone lit up with a notification that drained the color from her face. Your main raw material supplier has terminated the contract unilaterally. And then another notification. The bank had frozen the credit line until further notice. The music seemed to stop in her head. She didn't answer. She dialed the only number she thought could fix this. My number. I picked up on the third ring. The sounds of a quiet, expensive restaurant were my only background. Kai. She screamed into the phone. What did you do? Why are our partners leaving? I took a slow sip of my wine. The taste was exquisite. Leaving? I said. That's unfortunate. Maybe they just don't trust an amateur like Ricky. Maybe they realized the brain of the company walked out the door. The contracts were tied to my name, Alex. Not yours. Not the company's. Mine. Fix this. She begged. I'll give you anything. Just bring them back. You don't have enough money left to buy my time, Alex. And I don't partner with corpses. Tell Ricky to check the morning news. Golden Dawn isn't an investment. It's a funeral pyre. I hung up. The silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. The next day, the Grand Palace was prepared for the event of the year. The red carpet felt like a path to a new world. A black matte armored limousine pulled up. The air seemed to vibrate as the door opened. I stepped out, the flashes of 100 cameras trying to blind me. They failed. Regina was by my side, her dress shimmering like dragon scales. We weren't just guests. We were the owners of the night. For 7 years, I was the man standing 2 steps behind Alex. The invisible secretary. Today, they would learn that the man in the shadows was the one holding the spotlight. Is that Kai? The one who was fired? Why is he with Regina from Global Link? The rumors spread like a virus. They say he bought the Lingxian port this morning. He's worth billions now. Alex was standing in the center of the room, her hand shaking as she held her glass. She saw me. And for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Kai. What is this masquerade? How did you even get inside this building? And why are you holding that woman's hand? Do you have no shame? Regina smiled, and it was the coldest thing I had ever seen. That woman has a name, Alex. And it's a name you'll be begging to hear tomorrow. Kai is the guest of honor. In fact, he might be the one buying this palace by the end of the week. You look pale, Alex. Is Ricky not giving you the support you need? Or is it the 200 million he lost for you yesterday? That's a lie. Golden Dawn is a solid fund. Ricky said it was a sure thing. It was sure, for me. I bought the fund's debt and declared its liquidation 30 minutes ago. Check your phone, Ricky. Your investment is now worth less than the glass you're holding. Welcome to reality. The sound of breaking glass was the only thing heard in the sudden silence of the hall. I didn't stay for the aftermath. I had more important things to do than watch a child cry. Back in her office, the night was far from celebratory. It was a funeral for her career. How did this happen? Alex screamed at Ricky. You told me you checked the owners. There were shell companies, Alex. No one could have known Kai was behind them. He's a monster. He's not a monster. He's the man who built me, and now he's the man who's tearing me down. My pride blinded me. I thought he was just a tool. I didn't realize he was the foundation. The phone rang. It was the chairman. His voice was like a cold wind from a grave. Alex, the board has seen the liquidity reports. It's a catastrophe. You have until morning to restore the balance. If you fail, we will initiate the vote for your immediate removal. Find the money. Sell the land. Do whatever it takes. Restore the balance. With what? We have nothing left. Ricky whispered, his voice cracking. Kai has the land. The Lingxian district. If we can get him to sell it, even at double the price, we can save the company. Get him to sell. You fired him. You humiliated him. Why would he help you? Because he loved me. Or at least, he did. I have to try. It's the only way. An hour later, she was standing at the doors of my office. She didn't even knock. I was sitting with my back to her, watching the city through the glass. The lights felt like trophies. Kai, we need to talk. I know I made a mistake. I'm here to fix it. Old habits die hard, Alex. You still enter rooms like you own them. But you don't own this one. I fired Ricky. He's gone. I realize now that you were the one I should have trusted. I'm offering you a partnership. 50-50. We'll build an empire that will dwarf the Alex Group. $50-50. That's generous. Especially considering your company is currently worth about 50 cents. I already sold my shares, Alex. A week before I left. I knew exactly when the ship would start to sink. Regina is buying the rest of them now. She's very good at picking up the pieces I leave behind. You betrayed me. After everything we built together. I didn't betray you, Alex. I just adjusted the investment. You were a liability, and I liquidated you. Tomorrow, I buy your building. Your office. This very chair. I'll turn it into a shelter for dogs. They value loyalty more than you. Time is up, Alex. Security will escort you out. You have exactly 10 minutes. The walk out of my office was the longest 10 minutes of her life. I watched her silhouette disappear through the glass. She thought she was coming to negotiate. She didn't realize she was attending her own sentencing. System, finalize the acquisition of the secondary debt. I want every cent they owe to belong to me. Processing. Debt acquired. Mr. Kai, you now hold 70% of Alex Group's liabilities. You are the lead creditor. The next morning, the Alex Group boardroom felt like a tomb. The air was thick with the smell of old coffee and fear. Alex sat at the head of the table. But her chair seemed too big for her now. She looked like a child playing dress-up. The chairman stood up. His voice was trembling. Alex, the reports are in. We are 3 billion in the red. The shareholders are calling for blood. If we don't have a miracle by noon, this company is finished. Alex tried to speak, but her voice was a ghost of its former self. I'm working on the Lingxian land deal. Negotiations? With who? The chairman interrupted. The owner of that land isn't interested in talking. He's already here. And he didn't come to negotiate. He came to collect. The doors burst open. The sound was like a thunderclap in the silent room. I walked in. Behind me, a small army of lawyers in sharp black suits, carrying briefcases like weapons. Good morning, gentlemen. I believe you've been expecting me. Kai. Alex screamed, jumping to her feet. What is this? This is a private meeting. It was private, Alex. Now it's an audit. My name is Kai, and I hold the keys to your survival. I've spent the last 48 hours buying up every scrap of your debt from the banks you failed to pay. According to the terms of your credit agreements, since your market cap has fallen below the threshold, I have the right to immediate seizure. I'm here to claim this building. This company. And your seat, Alex. You can't do this. This is illegal. It's a raid. Alex was hysterical now, her hands waving wildly. No, Alex. This is math. The same boring math you said I spent too much time on. You signed these contracts a year ago. I told you to read the fine print, but you were too busy choosing the color of your new jet. The chairman looked at the papers, his face turning gray. He's right, everything is in order. The company is his. Alex looked around the room. She saw no allies. Only men who were already preparing to bow to the new king. I'll give you until noon to clear your desk. After that, anything left behind goes to the shredder. I turned my back on her and started giving orders to the directors. She was already a ghost. Later that night, the city air was cold. I walked through the underground parking lot toward my car. The echoes of my own steps felt like a countdown. I knew I wasn't alone. Suddenly, a figure lunged from the darkness. Ricky. He looked like a man who had been living in a sewer. You ruined everything. I was supposed to be the king. Ricky screamed, his voice echoing off the walls. I didn't even stop walking. You were never a king, Ricky. You were just a clown in a borrowed suit. Die. Ricky lunged forward, the blade glinting under the flickering lights. But before he could even get close, a shadow detached itself from the wall. My security is always faster than the desperate. A sickening crack followed. Ricky's scream of pain filled the garage as his arm was twisted behind his back. I finally stopped and turned around. I looked down at him as he groaned on the floor. You thought that by stealing a chair, you'd gain a brain. But intelligence isn't a title you can inherit. You stole $300 million from Alex's personal accounts to cover your losses. The police are already on their way. Enjoy your new life, Ricky. I hear the food in prison is very consistent. Something a man of your discipline will appreciate. I got into the car and closed the door. The silence of the armored interior was perfect. Drive. I have a city to rebuild. And a ghost to lay to rest. The next day, I stood in the middle of her former office. It was empty, save for a few boxes. I looked at the desk where she had fired me. It felt like a lifetime ago. There was a knock on the door. Regina walked in, carrying 2 glasses of crystal clear water. The banks are satisfied. The transition is complete. Good. Call the contractors. I want the sign on the building changed by sunset. Another knock. Faint this time. Alex was standing there, holding a single cardboard box. I just came for the things in the drawer. Personal items, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded. Take them. I have no interest in your memories. She walked to the desk, her movements slow and heavy. She opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a small, framed photo. She stared at it for a long time. Then, she looked up at me. Kai, was it all for this? Just to take my chair? I turned around slowly. I didn't take your chair, Alex. I took my life back. You were just the obstacle in the way. She put the photo in the box. I found these in the trash, where I threw Ricky. Your old gifts. I thought you might want them. I didn't even look at the box. Keep them. They belong to a man who no longer exists. Alex stood there for another second. If I had just said thank you, 7 years ago, would it be different? I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of something, but it wasn't love. It was gratitude. If you had said thank you, you wouldn't be Alex. And I wouldn't be the man who owns this city. So, thank you, Alex. For betraying me. You gave me the most valuable asset I ever possessed. Freedom from you. And the hunger to never be a victim again. Alex nodded slowly. She picked up her box and walked out. The door clicked shut, and the sound echoed through the emptiness. Regina handed me a glass. Well, Mr. Chairman. What's for tomorrow? Global expansion. I smiled. Tomorrow, we go to Lingxian. I want to build something that isn't made of glass and lies. Something that lasts. 6 months later, the name, Kai, was no longer a local scandal. It was a global warning. I moved my headquarters to Singapore. A city of glass towers and hidden fortunes. The perfect place for a ghost to build a fortress. My new office was twice as high as the old one. The air was thinner, and the stakes were much higher. Regina was already there, analyzing the global data streams. Kai, we have a problem. Someone is shorting our tech assets in London. I walked to the screen. A massive red spike was cutting through our projected growth like a blade. Who has that kind of liquidity? I asked. Regina didn't hesitate. The vulture. Marcus Thorne. Thorne didn't just buy companies. He picked their bones clean. And now he was looking at me like I was his next meal. Let him short it. I want to see how much fire he can handle before he burns. Meanwhile, in a small apartment in the outskirts of the city, Alex was watching the news. Her television was old, flickering. She saw me on the screen. The man who had been her shadow was now the sun she couldn't reach. She reached out to touch the screen, but her hand stopped. She wasn't part of my story anymore. She was just an observer. I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about the trap I was setting for Thorne. System, activate the Trojan protocol. Move 40% of our crypto liquidity into the secondary London nodes. I want Thorne to think I'm defending the stock. I want him to double down. I want him to be over-leveraged. The next day, Marcus Thorne was in his London office. A room filled with taxidermy and gold. He's fighting back, Thorne whispered. The boy is trying to protect his pride. Sell another billion. I want to see the architect beg. He didn't know he was selling air. I was the one providing the liquidity for his short positions. Back in Singapore, Regina was worried. Kai, if the stock drops another 5%, our margins will trigger an audit. Let it trigger. I want the world to see the audit. I want Thorne to believe his victory is complete. A storm was coming. Not just for the city, but for the global markets. Then, a message arrived from an unknown source. The Syndicate is watching you, architect. Don't be too clever. I smiled. If they're watching, it means they're afraid. And they should be. The market opened in London. The architect holding stock was in freefall. The headlines were screaming, "The fall of KAI." Thorne was laughing. He was opening a bottle of wine that cost more than a house. To the end of the architect. That was the exact moment I gave the command. Now. Buy it all back. Every single share. A tidal wave of capital hit the market. Thousands of orders processed in milliseconds. The stock didn't just stop falling. It reversed. It rocketed upward, faster than it had ever dropped. Thorne's laughter died in his throat. He watched the screen, his face turning the color of ash. What is this? Where is that money coming from? He screamed. But there was no one to answer. He was caught in a short squeeze. To cover his positions, he had to buy back the stock at prices he couldn't afford. He was bleeding billions every second. And I was the one selling the shares to him. By the end of the day, Marcus Thorne was bankrupt. His empire, built on the bones of others, had finally collapsed under its own weight. Regina walked in, a look of awe on her face. "Kai, you just liquidated a legend. Thorne is finished." He wasn't a legend. He was just a bully who forgot that the shadows can fight back. But the victory felt different. I knew Thorne was just the gatekeeper. The real war was just beginning. That evening, a package arrived at my penthouse. No return address. Just a heavy, black box. I opened it. Inside was an invitation. Gold engraving on black card. The Sovereign Club. Midnight. I knew what it was. The invitation to join the elite. Or to be destroyed by them. I dressed in my finest suit, but I kept the red lining. A reminder of who I was. And what I had survived. The club was located in a hidden underground chamber beneath an old cathedral. History and money, buried together. I walked into a room where the air smelled of expensive cigars and ancient secrets. 12 people were sitting around a round table. The man in the center stood up. He was older than Thorne, with a face that looked like it was carved from stone. "Welcome, architect." "You've made quite a mess of our markets. We don't like messes." I didn't blink. "Then maybe you should have hired a better gatekeeper than Marcus Thorne." The room went silent. No one had ever spoken to the sovereign like that. But I wasn't afraid of them. "Sit down, Kai," the sovereign said, pointing to an empty chair. "Let's discuss the price of your ambition." While I was dealing with the monsters of the world, Alex was facing a monster of her own. Her past. A man approached her. He was wearing a cheap suit, but his eyes were familiar. "Ricky." I'm out, Alex. On bail. And I need money. Kai took everything from us. We need to take it back. Alex looked at him and felt nothing but disgust. Leave me alone, Ricky. You're the reason I lost everything. Ricky grabbed her arm. He's a billionaire now. He's in Singapore living like a king. Don't you want what's yours? Alex pulled away. What's mine is gone. And what's his, he earned. Leave me alone. Back in the chamber, the sovereign was making his offer. We want you to manage our global holdings. $1 trillion under your control. But you must dissolve Architect Holdings. You must become one of us. No more red jackets. No more public stunts. I looked at the 12 people around the table. They were the masters of the world, but they were prisoners of their own rules. I stood up. I didn't build my empire to become a servant. Not even a servant to $1 trillion. The sovereign's face darkened. Then you are our enemy. And we don't allow enemies to survive. I walked toward the exit. I've been an enemy to better men than you. I'm still here. You're just a ghost story. The war had just gone from financial to personal. And for the first time, I felt the adrenaline of a real fight. Let them come. I am the architect. And I've already designed their downfall. I left the cathedral with a target on my back. I could feel the cold eyes of the sovereign even through the stone walls. I didn't take the main road. I knew they were already moving. The city of Singapore was no longer my playground, it was a hunting ground. Regina was waiting at the safe house. Her face was illuminated by the flickering light of a dozen encrypted tablets. Kai, they're hitting the power grid of our data center. It's not a hack. It's a blackout. Let them cut the power. I built the architect system to run on the heat of its own rage. Switch to the decentralized nodes. The screens roared back to life. A map of the world appeared, pulsating with points of light. My hidden servers. If the Syndicate wants a war in the shadows, I'll show them who owns the dark. Meanwhile, Ricky was in a back alley bar, meeting a man whose face was hidden by a silk mask. We know you want Kai dead, Ricky. We can provide the means. But we need the master key to his vault. I'll get it. I know his patterns. He thinks I'm a joke, but a joke can be lethal. I spent the night analyzing the Syndicate's assets. They were old money. Real estate, gold, oil. Heavy and slow. I was the new world. Fast, digital, and invisible. I didn't need to destroy them. I just needed to make them obsolete. Regina, Start the short sell on the sovereign's primary oil holdings in Dubai. Use the phantom accounts. But Kai, that's suicide. If they catch the trail, they'll freeze our entire liquidity. They won't catch it. The trail leads to a dead server in a basement in London. Thorne's old basement. By the time they realize what's happening, the price of their black gold will be worth less than the sand it sits under. The next morning, the first explosion happened. Not a bomb, but a news report. A scandal involving the Syndicate's lead bank. I watched the market crash from my balcony. The air in Singapore was sweet with the scent of a coming victory. But the victory was interrupted. A red laser dot appeared on my chest, right over my heart. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just looked into the reflection of the glass. Drop the tablet, Kai. And turn around slowly. The voice came from the shadows of my own room. It wasn't a professional. It was someone who had nothing left to lose. Ricky. You thought I was in jail. The sovereign has very long arms, Kai. And they want your head. I looked at him and felt only pity. Ricky, you're still a tool. They didn't free you. They just sent you to die. Shut up. Give me the master key. The drive on your desk. Give it to me, and maybe I'll make it quick. I slowly reached for the silver drive on my desk. You want the key to my empire? Here. Take it. Ricky lunged for it, his greed overcoming his caution. That was his final mistake. I didn't need a gun. I just needed physics. I grabbed his wrist and used his own momentum to send him through the glass railing. Ricky didn't even have time to scream. He fell into the darkness, a shadow returning to the shadows. The sniper on the roof fired, but I was already back inside. The bullet shattered a vase of white lilies. System, activate the Iron Curtain. Seal the penthouse. Now. I sat on the floor, my back against the cold steel. My heart was beating fast, but my mind was clear. I'm fine. But the game just changed. They tried to kill me in my own home. They've broken the rules. Regina, get me the sovereign's private location. The one they think is unhackable. The island. If they want to play God, I'll show them what a fallen angel can do. While I was preparing for war, Alex was sitting in a park, holding a newspaper. She saw the headline about the shooting at the penthouse. She closed her eyes. She knew this world. She knew that once the blood starts flowing, it doesn't stop until everything is gone. I'm sorry, Kai, she whispered to the wind. I should have been your shield. Not your catalyst. But her apologies were too late. I was already on a private jet, flying toward the heart of the storm. I sat in the back, surrounded by the glow of 3 different laptops. The Syndicate's assets were starting to bleed. Every time they tried to block a hack, I opened 3 more. I was a Hydra. I was the ghost in their machines. The Sovereign was sitting in his island fortress, watching the total collapse of his digital empire. How? How is he doing this? He's not just a man anymore, sir. He's an algorithm. He's pre-calculated every move we could possibly make. The Sovereign looked at the screen and saw his own face reflected in the "Game Over" text. He looked old. He looked human. The jet landed on a small, hidden strip. I stepped out into the humid island air. The smell of jasmine and gunpowder. Regina was on my comms. "Kai, you're inside their perimeter. You have 10 minutes before their backup arrives." "10 minutes. It's a lifetime for an architect." I moved toward the main complex. I didn't use a bomb to open the doors. I used a single line of code. The security system bowed to its new master. I walked through the halls, past the frozen security guards. I had disabled their biometric locks. They were prisoners in their own suits. I entered the main chamber. The 12 members of the Sovereign Club were there. No longer silhouettes. Just terrified old men. You're here," the Sovereign whispered. "What do you want? Money? We can give you trillions." "Trillions?" I laughed. "I already have your money. I've been siphoning it since Thorn fell. I own your banks. I own your oil." "Then why are you here? To kill us?" the Sovereign asked, his voice cracking. "Kill you? No. I'm here to do something much worse. I'm here to make you witness your own extinction." "I've just released your private records. Every bribe, every murder, every stolen cent. It's all on the public blockchain. Now, you can keep your money. But you'll never have another moment of peace. You are ghosts now. Just like I was." The Sovereign fell to his knees. His world was over. Not by a bullet, but by the truth. The architect's greatest weapon. I walked out of the villa as the helicopters arrived. Interpol. They weren't here for me. They were here for them. The war was won. But as I sat in the jet, looking at the ocean, I realized, the architect never stops building. And the next project is myself. The jet cut through the clouds like a scalpel, leaving the wreckage of the Syndicate far below. The world was changing, but I was already ahead of the curve. Regina was quiet, looking at the data streams on her arm-mounted screen. "Kai, the world is calling you a hero. Or a monster. They can't decide." I didn't care about the labels. Heroes and monsters are just characters in other people's stories. I was the one writing the book. Back in Singapore, the streets felt different. The air was cleaner. The fear that the Syndicate had projected for decades was gone. I walked through my lobby, and for the first time, I didn't see employees. I saw partners. People who believed in the design. But there was one more thing I had to do. A debt of the heart that needed to be settled before I could move forward. I drove to the old district. The place where it all began. The rain was light now, almost like a memory. I saw her standing by a small flower shop. Alex. She was helping an old woman with a heavy box. She didn't have the jewelry. She didn't have the expensive suit. But for the first time, she looked like she belonged to herself. I stepped out of the car. The sound of the door closing echoed in the quiet street. She turned around. She froze for a second, the box of flowers heavy in her arms. I walked toward her, stopping a few feet away. I didn't come here to gloat, Alex. I came to give you something. I handed her a small, simple key. Not a digital one. A real, heavy iron key. It's the deed to your father's old house. The one the banks took. It's yours again. Why? She asked. After everything I did, why would you do this? Because the architect doesn't build on ruins, Alex. He builds on foundations. And that house was your only true foundation. I've cleared your name from the Syndicate's records. You're free. Don't waste it this time. Kai. She called out. I really am sorry. For everything. I didn't stop. I just raised my hand in a final salute. The past was finally buried. And it was time to build the future. The next day, I arrived in Lingxian. The wasteland that was now the most valuable land on Earth. I stood on the edge of the foundation of the main tower. The architect's spire. Regina was there with the blueprints. This city will be powered by clean energy and transparent data. No more shadows, Kai. Good. Shadows are where monsters grow. We're building a city of light. We'll build schools that teach logic, and banks that value loyalty. A system that works for the people, not against them. It was my ultimate revenge. Not to destroy my enemies, but to build a world where they could never exist again. Months passed. The spire was completed. A beacon of glass and steel reaching for the stars. I sat in my new office, at the very top. The room was circular, giving me a 360-degree view of the world I had built. Regina walked in with 2 glasses. The first flight to the moon colonies just cleared, Kai. We're going global. And beyond. I took a sip of the water. It was clear and cool. The architect never stops building, Regina. The moon is just another foundation. But as I looked at the vastness of space, I thought about the journey. The pain, the betrayal, the cold nights on the rooftop. I realized that the revenge wasn't the goal. It was just the fuel. The goal was the freedom to design my own destiny. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, old coin. The first dollar I ever earned. A reminder of the hunger. Never forget where you came from, I whispered. Or you'll never know where you're going. I placed the coin on the glass table. It made a small, solid sound. The final piece of the puzzle. The city below was humming with life. Millions of people, living in a design I had created. It was a heavy responsibility, but I was ready. I knew that one day, someone would try to tear it all down. Someone would get greedy. Someone would betray their loyalty. Let them come. I've built the system to be resilient. I've built it to learn from its own scars. I turned away from the window and sat back down. There was work to be done. There were always more foundations to lay. Regina sat across from him. What's the next project, architect? I looked at the data for a distant star system. I think it's time we moved beyond this rock, Regina. The universe is waiting for a new design. She laughed. You never stop, do you? Stop. Why would I stop when the canvas is infinite? We worked through the night, as we always did. Partners in time. Architects of the future. The world outside continued to spin, but here, in the spire, we were the ones turning the wheel. I thought back to the man on the rooftop in the rain. He would be proud of what we've become. He would be glad he didn't jump. The architect isn't just a name. It's a way of being. It's the refusal to be a victim of circumstance. It's the courage to look at the ruins and see a palace. It's the strength to be the bridge over the abyss. I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the heartbeat of the city. It was a good sound. A sound of progress. But progress is a journey, not a destination. And the road ahead is filled with wonders I haven't even dreamed of yet. I took a deep breath. The air was thin, but it was pure. It was the air of the summit. I am Kai, the architect. And my story is just beginning. Because as long as there is space, I will build. As long as there is time, I will design. And to anyone who thinks they can stop the design, remember what happened to the Syndicate. Remember the ice. Revenge is a fire that consumes itself. But the design is a structure that endures. Choose wisely. I looked at the empty glass on my desk. I didn't need water anymore. I was the source. I stood up and walked to the elevator. The doors opened with a soft chime. The sound of the future. I descended to the lobby. The city was waking up. Millions of stories, all connected by my vision. I walked through a park. A small child was trying to build a castle out of blocks. It kept falling down. I stopped and knelt down beside him. I showed him how to build a stronger base. I showed him the foundation. The boy smiled as the castle stood tall. He looked at me with wonder. "Who are you, mister?" I stood up and adjusted my red jacket. "I'm just a man who likes to build, kid. Keep at it. You'll get there." I walked back to the spire. The sun was high in the sky now. The world was bright and full of possibility. Regina was waiting for me. She had a new set of data. "Kai, we've received a signal. From outside the solar system." I looked at the signal. It was a design. A complex, beautiful design. I smiled. "It seems the universe is looking for an architect." I whispered. "Let's not keep it waiting." We began the work. The largest project in human history. The interstellar spire. Years turned into decades. I didn't age like other men. My purpose kept me young. My vision kept me strong. The city of Lingxian was now a global capital. A center of art, science, and freedom. Alex had passed away peacefully in her house. She had lived a quiet, good life. I was glad she had found her peace. Ricky was still in prison. He had become a ghost in a cell. A warning to anyone who values greed over loyalty. Regina was by my side through it all. My constant. The one who understood the design better than anyone. We were ready to leave. The ship was a masterpiece of my own design. A city in the stars. As we activated the drive, I looked back at the Earth. A small, blue marble in the dark. It looked so fragile. So precious. "Take care of her," I whispered to the billions below. "I've given you the tools. Now you must build the future." The drive engaged. The world dissolved into a blur of starlight. We were moving into the unknown. But the unknown was just another challenge for the architect. A new canvas for a new design. We found a planet that was perfect for life. A world of oceans and mountains. A new foundation. We landed. I stepped out onto the surface. The air was fresh and clean. The smell of a new world. I took a deep breath. "Welcome home, Regina. Let's start building." And so, the architect's story continues. From the shadows of a skyscraper to the light of a new world. Because the design is eternal. And the architect never stops. I looked at the old coin on my desk. It had traveled across the stars with me. A reminder of the hunger. I am Kai. The architect of the stars. Revenge brought me here. But vision made me stay. Remember the ice. And building on it. The universe is a design. And I am the one turning the wheel. Always. Loyalty is the only currency that matters. Remember that. Or you'll find yourself on a rooftop in the rain. The storm has passed. But the silence it left behind is louder than the thunder. I stood in my office, looking at the universe I now designed. Not by force, but by truth. Money is just paper. Power is just a shadow. But time, and loyalty, those are the only assets that never lose value. My name is Kai. And this is just the beginning. I had already designed their ruin, and my own ascension. Because in the end, the architect always wins. Always. The spire stood as a monument to the human spirit. And to the man who refused to break. I sat back and watched the sunrise. The three suns created a beautiful, complex light. A perfect design. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The air was thin, but it was mine. The design is complete. But the work is never finished. There is always another star. Another project. I smiled as I saw a new signal on my screen. Another design. Another world waiting to be built. Let's get started. I whispered. Regina, call the contractors. We're moving to Andromeda. Because the architect never stops building. Money can be returned. Time and loyalty, never. Remember that. My name is Kai. Loyalty is a virtue, but in a world where numbers dictate reality, loyalty is nothing more than a bad investment.